Hey everyone, here we are. It is Tuesday, June 29th. Tomorrow is the end of the month. Another month is now gone by. I'm Tom Young. We're here for anchorfm.com podcast called Money Shifts and Facebook Live. The message here is always inspiring, always informational, always truthful. With all respect to everybody that listens to me, the people you share my links with to get people on here to listen. We talk about a lot of ideas and a lot of concepts, but I can assure you that one thing, I would not talk about anything on here that wasn't provable mathematically and otherwise. It has to be correct. In the note, I put in there the difference between fiduciary and suitability. There is a very, very big difference. We'll get there in a minute. I'll talk about that. But as we start every presentation, we start with prayers for everybody in the world. I have listeners that gather from around the world and listen to my talks, and I appreciate you so much. My prayers go out to all of you, as we all should pray for everybody. The financial storm is growing, and it is getting closer and closer. The winds are picking up. The sky is getting dark. And this financial storm is not just the United States of America. This financial storm is around the world because all of the free worlds have been borrowing money from the central banks around the world to the point where they will never be paid back. So the central bank is going to be forced into reaction. They're actually talking now about reset. What does that mean? I don't know. We'll talk about that in a minute. But our prayers go out to everybody. Our prayers go out to those who have lost loved ones during this period of Chinese virus, whatever you want to call it, and the variants now that they're talking about. It's almost who do you believe anymore with what's going on. Our prayers also go out for those who have been lost, that the Lord would open his arms and gather them into his kingdom above for all eternity. In Jesus' name we pray. Let's get started. The quote today, I want to start with a quote today. I think that's important. Abraham Lincoln has caught my ear, and I've got just a couple of his quotes that I want to share today. And this one is probably so important. A house divided against itself cannot stand. And folks, that is what I see happening in politics. And they continue to try to divide us against each other by age, by race, by color, all of these things. And I always say to everybody, give me your hand and I'll cut you, and let's see what color you bleed. I believe we all bleed red. We are all human beings created in God's image. I don't care what color your skin is, whether it's some shade of brown. My skin is not white. It is a shade of brown. It is a tan color, whatever you want to call it. And I've got some suntan. Skin color doesn't matter. Nothing matters. We all bleed red. So we are all God's children and should be treated the same way, and we should treat each other the same way with that kind of respect. I am rather inclined to silence, and whether that be wise or not is at least more unusual nowadays to find a man who can hold his tongue than to find one who cannot. I am appalled on some of the stuff on the internet, the swearing and cursing and everything that goes on. It is just beyond belief. In the Old Testament, it talks about swear words, vulgar language. It is the downfall of a person's integrity. If those are the only words that you can think of, you are already in decline. And I hope I will probably lose some followers over this, what I'm saying, but you need to figure this out, that those vulgar words don't mean anything. There was a young man at a club that I belonged to that would play golf, and every time we would play golf, he would go off into this cursory thing. And he was a businessman. I knew he had a young daughter, and one day in the locker room, I said to him, I said, can I say something to you? And I said to him, I said, I think his name was Eric. I said, Eric, I'm really disappointed. I says, I think so highly of you being a successful businessman that you cannot control your language, and you actually are destroying your own self with the language you use. Can I ask you a question? I know you have a young 11, 12-year-old daughter. Do you use that kind of language around her? And he just looked at me. I don't know whether he was going to punch me or what. But he didn't say anything. And a few weeks later, we come back together. We're in the locker room. And he stepped up to me and he says, can I give you a hug? I said, okay. So I gave him a manly hug, 2 pats on the back. And he says, you changed my life a couple of weeks ago. You said something to me that my friends didn't have the guts to say to me. Thank you so much for what you said to me that day. It literally blew me away. Don't be afraid with love in your heart to say something to somebody that is off the deep end. When we talk about finances, you know, the title that I put on today is what the banks don't tell you, is really the strategies I want to share with you today. You know, one of the things that we hear a lot about is compound interest. Compound interest over a period of time. It sounds wonderful, but it has a couple of its own bad uses. Number one, is it a taxable account or an untaxable account? Let me share an example out of Kim Butler's book here. Let me find the numbers page. Where did it go? I got it right here. Here it is. So we're going to put $1 in an account and we're going to double it every day for 20 days. So $1 doubles every day. So day 2, it's $2, then $4, then $8. So it doubles every day. At the end of 20 days, that account is worth $1,048,576. And the increase, the growth in that day is $13,557. Now let's take that same account and tax it at 35% for the same 20 days. So at the end of the first day, the account isn't worth $2, it's worth $1.65 because there was 35 cents tax. And then 58, and then 95, and so on and so forth. So at the end of the 20 days, the account is now worth $22,370. Wait a minute, Tom. $22,370. Without taxation, it's worth $1,048,000. And the tax due in that next day is $4,745. You know, just thinking about how our money is used, and that's all I'm talking about here, is we have to change the way we think. And when I look at that and I look at thinking, and if I look at the principles, maximize the present instead of projecting the future. Predictions are difficult, especially about the future, says Yogi Berra. If projections don't work for the communists, what leads you to think they will work for you? You know, it's interesting when we think about money and what's going on, it is just strange. And we have to stand our ground. You know, the funny thing about all of this is we're trying to think better. I believe in my heart that everybody that listens to me is truly trying to think better, think differently about money and finances and everything going on in their life, because the financial storm is going to eat up most people that aren't thinking correctly. They're going to find it very, very hard to survive the storm with anything left over. And then talking about that, it talks about, I want to talk about principle number 5. Remember the principles of prosperity? We talked about those yesterday. They're think, see, measure. Number 4 is flow, and number 5 is control. And what I want to do, I want to talk about number 5 today. Number 5 is really so important. If I can put my finger on it here, what do I do with it? There it is, principle number 5. Focus on efficiency and ownership. Nothing we acquire will improve the quality of our life more than having full control of the use of our natural cognitive abilities. Kathy Colby. Understand the financial circle of influence that you control. Many years ago, Stephen Covey wrote a best-selling self-help book entitled 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. We did that book a few months ago. The book was a detailed discussion of 7 actions Covey identified that lead to successful living, provided the actions become habitual behavior, not occasional behavior. For Covey, a habit is the intersection of knowledge, skill, and desire. In other words, in order to be able to habitually do something that leads to success, one must know what to do, know how to do it, and want to do it. Some of the 7 habits involve gaining greater mastery over one's own behavior. You know, all of this stuff that I talk about is kind of unique. And I want to share with you today just some ideas that are strategies and why they are important. The first one is have high deductibles on your car, home, liability, umbrella insurance. How do I do that, Tom? Have high deductibles. Well, remember the goal, number 1, Financial Mastery Coaching Blueprint, number 1, save 20% of your gross annual income. Well, how do I do that? You have to find the money that you're spending unknowingly and unnecessarily and get back in your control so that it can be saved. As soon as I start accumulating a few $1,000s in savings, as early as that, I can go to my auto insurance and increase the collision deductible on my auto insurance. If my car is more than 7 or 8 years old, I should eliminate the collision coverage off the car because the insurance company is not going to give you a lot of money if you destroy the car. If you total the car and it's your fault in the accident, they're not going to give you a lot of money. They're going to give you the average value of a 7 or 8 or 9-year-old automobile. And they're going to depreciate it based on the mileage and the shape of the automobile when it was in the accident. So you're better off to take the few $100s a year that you pay for that collision coverage, maybe as much as $400 or $500 a year, and add it to your savings, because you can afford to have higher deductibles because I have cash saved. Same with my homeowner's insurance, my liability insurance, even my medical insurance. I can raise the deductible, go to a HSA plan, a health savings account, and save money in a tax deductible way in that savings account and use that money to help pay for medical. There are lots of ways to save money. We're going to talk about these in the coming days. That's going to be the strategy for the month of July. We're going to talk about what are the strategies that I can use to save money, accumulate money, create a retirement plan that has absolute certainty that I will be able to live my life as I want in my retirement. Number 2, use dividend paying whole life insurance as your emergency opportunity fund. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about life insurance in a big, big way. We're going to talk about universal life. I'm going to show you a presentation that I was shown 30, 35, 40 years ago in the insurance industry, that they realized that it showed you too much information, so they quit using that illustration. I'm going to bring that back. It's called the funnel talk. I'll bring that back tomorrow. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. God bless. Get my new book, The Family Money Farm, The CFO Project. You can get it on Amazon or on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can go up here, put in your name and email address at cfo-project.com and get an instant download of the book cover to cover. God bless. We'll see you here tomorrow at 12 noon.